Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to the RPG game series. And in this video, I'm going to be making a custom inventory system. As you can see, there's hotbars, there are items and whatnot, but also a custom item system where you can drop items, you can pick them up, you can drop the items, pick them up. You can also rearrange these items. Now let's get on to the video. Okay, so I'm going to separate this video I'm going to separate the video into two parts. The part where I explain the server, the custom item system, the framework, and then the client, which is the UI, the hotbar, the backpack, and whatnot. So first I'll disable this load module so there's no more client UI. Okay. Oops. There we go. Okay, so first we're making the server-sided system first. I'll show you where the items are located in the server. For example, the apples, the sword, it has to be stored somewhere, and then it has to be cloned, and it has to be parented in the player. So it's in a replicated storage, because there's animations, assets, client systems, and there's also a new folder, items. You add a new folder, items. This is for the items that will be placed into the workspace. And then these subfolders, they're categories. There's food, there's miscellaneous, and there's weapon. Okay, you can add as many categories as you want, as little categories as you want. It's up to you. So that's where we store the items. Okay. Right. Next, the data handler. Okay, so for the data handler, let's go to the data handler. In the profile template, we have to add a new value, inventory. So instead of inventory, there's items. This is for all the items that the player saves. Okay. Like apple, sword, everything is put into items. We don't handle the layout in the server, by the way. This layout is to just save the layout. The layout has backpack and hotbar. And then we just save it. We just save it and then we give it to the client. That's it. We save the actual items in the items. We have no business handling the layout. We could. That was my original intention, but it's actually bad. There's no separation. It's going to be complicated to handle. Okay. And so that's the new data handler. You add the new data. And then I'll show you the inventory module server. Okay, so I'll show you the inventory system. So in systems, there's combat system and races. Add a new folder, inventory system. There's two new modules. Okay, we have items database. What's this? This is a database for the items, which means if you want to create a new item, you put that item into this items database. So an item in our framework, it has this format: the name of the item, the ID, the category, the rarity, the max quantity, and description. The reason why I added a type is that so there's autocomplete, there's IntelliSense. You don't have to add the type. It's not strict. For the category, I added weapon, food, and miscellaneous. You can add as many and as little as you want. So basically, if you want to add new items, you add it here. It's like a config file. Okay. And if this file gets too big, then you can separate it into multiple submodules that inserts items inside of this table or something. All right. So here I have two items, the star sword and the apple. So this is the item template. This is the template ID, star sword and apple. As you can see, it's all lowercase. There's underscores, and the name is the name that will be displayed in the game. The template ID is the same as this template ID. So why add a template ID when this is already the template ID? So that it's easy. Well, it's so that it's easy to get a template ID from an existing item. So you don't have to do any table magic, any weird logic. so that's it, it's easy to fetch. Okay, and there's category, what category the item is. There's weapon, food, the max quantity, 1, this is 10. So when something exceeds the max quantity, we we create a new stack. It's like Minecraft. The stack is 64. If it exceeds 64, it creates a new stack. There's the description for the item description, as you can see. And then there's utility functions that you can get. The get item, which gets the item from the items database by returning items database.items template ID. We don't really need this, but it's just a nice little function to have. There's two items exist. We check if items exist. And then we can get all items by category here by creating a table for items. We look through all the items database. We check if item.category equals category. If it's the same as this parameter, if this, then we put it inside of this table, and then we return it. Okay, so that's the items database. Make sure you initialize your items here in this config, and you need to create the items first with the tools and whatnot. Empty items is fine, empty tools is fine. Okay, so now let's go into the inventory module server. Let me close all of this. Do not do anything yet. Okay, so there's a lot of functions here. It may seem confusing. Let's go with the variables first. Okay, it's actually these functions are not too complicated. So the variables that we're adding is HTTP service, game get service, HTTP service. This is to create random IDs for the items. And then there's these remote events, which I will show you here. So in replica storage, there's remotes. There's two new remote events: inventory change in replication, inventory change. Add this, and drop item in remotes. You have to add that. Okay, you're done. Okay, cool. So we're gonna use both of these. One to change the inventory layout, and the other to drop the item. Cool. Now we get the profiles by requiring game server code service database profiles to get the player's data, the items database to get the items, and then we make a local variable for the max items. What is the max items? Max items is the max amount of quantities that you can store in your backpack, in your storage, in your item storage, or whatever. You can put this inside of the player here. You add max items, max backpack items, or something, but for now I'll do this. You can do that if you want to. Both this adding the max items here will be more customizable. You can add a new item for a bigger backpack or something. It works too, but I want to make it easy for now. And for inventory change, it's pretty simple, but I'll do that later. For now, let's go over render item. This is the most important one of the most important function. Okay, so here there's 3 parameters in this render item function, but first I'll need to tell you what render item is about. So render item is to actually create the item and put it in the workspace, and not only create the item but also update the existing item if it already exists. So if a quantity change, you call this render item to an existing item, then you update the ID. Update the attributes, the quantity attribute, the description attribute, and so on. So there's 3 parameters: the player, the item ID, and the item. The item, what is the item? The item uses the item table format in items database like this: name, ID, category, rarity, max quantity, description. But there's one more that inside of that item format, which is the quantity, not just max quantity, but also the quantity, the current quantity. First, we check if item exists. Is this empty or not? If it doesn't exist, then we return. Okay, if it doesn't exist, then we return. And then we need to check for the backpack tools. We look through the backpack because, as you can tell, because if you don't know this already, to add a tool to a player, you need to place it inside of the player's backpack. Is there a player here? Nah, oh man. Yeah, sure. It's inside of the play. Okay, I'll show you. Player, it's not player, Sushi Master backpack. The tools are inside of the backpack right here. Okay, so that's explained. So what we do here in these two loops, in these two logics, is we check if the item already exists. So we loop through the backpack. We check if the item ID, the attribute item ID, is the same as item ID, because these items, they will get attributes. Okay, we check for the item ID. If it's the same, then we check if is quantity 0. If it is, then destroy it. Okay, and then we just update the attributes, the quantity to the current quantity, the max quantity to the current max quantity, the description to the current description. What we don't want to update is the item ID and the template ID. That must stay. Okay, and then the character tool. We get the character and we find for child item.name, because when you equip an item, the item will be parented to your character right here. The item is parented to my character and the name is the item.name, not the template ID but the name. No, it's not lowercase, it doesn't have underscore. This is the display name. Okay, and then we check if item ID the same. Does the character tool exist also? If it does, then we check. Okay, if it does, then the tool already exists. So the reason why we do these two checks is because we check, is the item inside of backpack? No. Well, maybe the item is inside of the character. Maybe it's equipped. If it's equipped, then we check. We do the same things here. Okay, so, and then we also return, right? We also return so that we don't duplicate the item. Okay, now that we got this out of the way, we got the updates out of the way. Also ignore these comments. It's just for debugging, for the lag. If you notice any lag, it's because of Roblox's lazy loading. It will only lag in the first item drop or the first item render, and then it won't lag after that. It's because if a new item is placed into the workspace and Roblox hasn't loaded it, it will lag to load the items. Yeah, I've checked, I've debugged. There's no lag in the server. It's only a few milliseconds. And I disabled the client UI as well. It's not the problem with the client UI. It's Roblox's lazy loading. So if you want to quote unquote fix this issue, if you notice any lags, then you have to load every single item in replicated storage, which Roblox doesn't do. Actually, Roblox doesn't do that because loading will take a really long time. I think that's what other games do. They just load everything, but it's gonna take a long time, I think. Okay, so now here we create the item. First, we get the item category. So game.replicate.storage.items find for child item.category. As you can tell from what I've explained before, these subfolders, they're categories. And if item category exists, if this folder exists, then we check if the physical item exists. By item category find for child item.template ID. So these tools, they need to be the template names, not the display names. See? So if they exist, then we clone the item. I also added a type here so that there's autocomplete. You can add this, you cannot, you don't have to add this. Okay. And then we change the name to the display name, item.name, so that it's no longer the underscore, the lowercase. And then we set item clone.canBeDropped equals false. This is important here. So usually items, you can drop it by pressing backspace. Now you can't anymore because we're adding a custom functionality for the drop. And then we set the attributes, the item ID to item ID, the template ID to item.template ID, category to item.category, max quantity, description, and then we parent it to the backpack. So that's render item, okay? And then, so that's how the items come to be, just from tables, and then we create them and make them real by placing them in the workspace. So that's how you make the item actually functional, just from just from tables. So in init, what is init? Init is the function that actually calls render items. Like I'll show you what the purpose of module.init is, to initialize the player's inventory. So there's one parameter, which is player. You just add a print if you want, you don't have to. So we get the profile of the player, we get the inventory, we get the character, and then we loop through the inventory.items, the item ID and item. So what is item ID? So as you can see, this is the key, this is the value. Item ID is the key, and item ID is a randomly generated string, which I will explain later. We print iteration if you don't. It's just for debugging, and then we render the item. That's how you make the render. That's how you make the item actually work. So we loop through the existing inventory tables, and we just put them in existence. Okay, so where do you call the init module? So here's a big change that I did. In game.service server script service, in customization, player appearance is removed. It's removed. And in combat, the spawn function is removed, and in player appearance, it's renamed to spawn. Because combat server handles spawn for adding the attributes. Player appearance handles the player spawn to handle the player appearance. Well, why not just put them inside one script so that it's less redundant? So let's go to spawn. What is it? So we get the render appearance module, we get the profiles module, and we also get the inventory module server. And let's create a function, apply attributes, character set attribute, combo 1. It's something needed. So we apply it to existing NPCs inside of workspace. So we loop through everything in workspace and get descendants, not just the children, the descendants, every single part and every single part. And then we just check if that part a humanoid. If it is, then let's just apply the attribute to the parent. It's simpler. Instead of looping through the children and checking if a humanoid exists, why not just check for everything? So that it also works when characters are inside of folders. And then we apply the attributes here too. So this game.players.player added. If player is added, we add a print. If you don't have to, okay, just for debugging. So we wait for profiles player to exist, because it's not gonna be finished initializing the profiles player instantly. It's going to take a few milliseconds. So that's why we have to wait first, because this might run first, okay? And then once profiles player exists, then we put the player's profile inside of a local variable so that we can access it. We get the character, and we check if the character already exists or not. This is only for studio, because usually it takes some time before the character gets added, but in studio it's instant. We apply the attributes, and then we init the inventory module server with the player. And then for the player appearance, we check if player has appearance loaded. If the appearance has loaded, then we render the appearance and we return. The reason why we return is that we don't need these functions anymore. Okay. So if character hasn't loaded here, if character doesn't exist here, then we add. So this is actually for studio only. Studio only. Now for the real game, you actually use character added. So if the player once the character gets added, we apply the attributes, and then we init the inventory module server. So where do we render the appearance? We render it here. We wait for the appearance to fully load, and then we render this appearance with profile data.appearance. Okay, so how do we test the render items? I'm not going to show the GIF item first because it's complicated logic. So let's just manually put it here. So here in profile, the data dot inventory dot items. So we put the items instead of data dot inventory dot items. Okay, and then I'll show you how IDs work. So IDs, they're just randomly generated strings for each item. So maybe this randomly generated ID here, ID 1 2 3 4 5, just randomly generated strings. Let's add a few items. Let's just add a few items. Okay, here let's add a sword. Let's add a sword here, and here let's add an apple. Oops, make it random. So yeah, so that's how they look like. This is the random ID, and let's add commas. And instead of the random ID, instead of the key, this is the key and this is the value. That's what I said earlier in render item. In it, as you can see, item ID, item. Let's add the quantity. So this is not inside of the items database because in the database there's no quantity. So let's do 10 here, let's do 5 here. Let's do 1 here because the max quantity is 1. And yeah, let's see if this works. So let's join here. Okay, now it initializes the items. Let's see, it's inside of backpack. Let's see the attributes. See, there's the attributes right here. 10 quantity, it's all spot on. Okay, so that's render item. And then I'll show you give item and remove item. Okay, so first let's remove this in data handler. Let's remove that. We don't want to hard code any items. So before we get into give item, I'll need to show you the utility functions that are needed here. So find existing items. What's that? The purpose of this function is to find if there are any items with the same template ID. Basically checking if there are any items with the same name. For example, find existing items. There's player, there's template ID. We check, do apples exist in this player's inventory? Because items can be duplicated. There can be multiple stacks of items. There can be 10 items. So if we do player here, we call this function, we put in player, we put in apple, we check all the apples instead of the player. We get the profile, we get the inventory. We create a new table for existing items. We look through all the items. We check if the template ID is the same as this. And then we put it here and return. Okay. So this gets all the existing items instead of the player with this template ID. We need this to handle stacks, to handle item duplication. And then get inventory count. What's this? It's to get the count of the inventory, not just the amount of items, but the quantity too. We get the profile, we get the inventory, we get the count. So we loop through the items. We check item quantity exists. Of course, it exists. It's just to safely do this loop. We add in the quantity here, and if it doesn't exist, then we add in 1, and then we return the quantity. Here we return the existing items. So why do we do this? Well, it's because there's some max items here, and the items can't exceed the max items in the backpack. That's why we get inventory count. And there's also max quantity in the items. That's why we get existing items, because if there's an existing item and the quantity doesn't exceed the max quantity, then we just add more quantity to it. So then give items. The purpose of this function is to give an item to a player. So right now we hard code the items into a player, which isn't good. We need a function to give the items. There's 3 parameters: the player, the template ID, and the quantity. Okay, and then this function also generates the custom ID. So we get the profile, we get the inventory, and then we get the base template from here. Items, database.get item, template ID. We check. If it doesn't exist, then we return. Let's say if I put in candle in the template ID, well, candle doesn't exist here, then we return. Okay. We check if the items already exist inside of the player, if candles already exist. Why do we check? Well, it's because we want to just add more quantity to it until the max quantity. So we get the max quantity, and then we get the quantity of the item of the base template. And then the quantity is the parameter, the amount of items we give to the player, or 1, just to save it, make it safe. So we look through the existing items, if there are any. We check if quantity is smaller or equal to 0, then return on. Why do we do that? Well, because we're going to be decreasing the quantity in these loops. We slowly decrease the quantities in loops, in iterations. That's why we return and stop the script when quantity reaches 0. We don't want to add more. We don't want to exceed the quantity parameter. Then it's not gonna work properly then. So we get the inventory count of the player. We get the available space of the inventory by getting max items minus inventory count. Max items is 100. Let's say the inventory count is 10. There's 90 available space. The reason why we do math.max is because we need to check what's the highest number, 0 or this. Because we can just do max items minus inventory count, but what if it goes to the negatives? Then it's gonna be messy. It's gonna break. So that's why we need to safeguard it by doing math.max and adding 0 to the parameter so that it doesn't get to negative numbers. So if available space is 0, then we stop this script. Okay, we stop the script. If anything, we can do return end. Let's do return end. Then just return end. We stop everything, since there's no more space left. Then there's 3 parameters: can add to stack, want to add, and actually added. So what is can add to stack? As you can tell, as I've said before, these items, they have max quantities. So we check how many items can we add before it reaches the max quantity. We do existing item dot max quantity minus existing item dot quantity. So let's say we already have apple. We want to add apple, and we have a quantity of 2, and we just decrease max quantity with the quantity. So that means we have 8 available, 8 items that can be added to stack. And then 1 to add to stack, because what if the quantity is smaller than can add to stack? So let's say the quantity is 5 and can add to stack is 8, then 1 to add is 5. The reason why we do math.min quantity and can add to stack is, let's say the quantity is 200 and can add to stack is actually 8, then we get the smallest number in 8, because adding 200 will exceed the maximum value. And then actually added is, so we can just want to add, right? But actually added is to make it so it doesn't exceed the available space of the inventory. So these are all safeguards to make sure that something doesn't exist the max quantity, or the item doesn't exceed the available space in the inventory. So if this number is bigger than 0, then we just add the quantity. We decrease the quantity variable here. So we go on to the next loop. If there's 10 stacks already or something, if it's only one stack, then sure. We check all the existing items to see if there's any available space, any available stack. Okay. We decrease the quantity and then we render the items. Because the item already exists, it's re-rendering it. So once this loop is over, so once we've added items to the existing items, and there's still more quantity left, if there's still more quantity left, then let's create a new item. Okay, stacks equals math.floor quantity and max quantity. What this is saying is we're getting stacks from the quantity parameter. So I'll actually visualize this. So here we give item apple 70. Okay, to player A. Player A has an existing apple, with 7 quantity. So what we do here is we loop through the player existing items, which is just existing items. We loop through this apple quantity 7, and then the quantity is 70. Then we just give 3. Now the apple is in the max quantity. And if there's more, then we go on to the next loop. We do the same thing here. And then we decrease the quantity -3 and 67 -3. And now the quantity is what? 64. Now the quantity is 64. And then we just get the stacks. Given stacks, which is the math.floor quantity, max quantity is 10, which means the given stack is 6. We give 6 stacks, and we do leftover by doing quantity modulo. So if there's a leftover, then modulo is basically checking if there's any decimal in quantity divided by max quantity. That's why we do stacks plus leftover. If leftover is bigger than 0, that means there's a remainder. Then we stacks plus 1. If there's nothing left over, then stacks plus 0. So because the given stack is 6.4, right, we change it to given stack equals 7. So 7 loops, 7 iterations. So we loop through the stacks for I1 total stack. We get the inventory count, we get the available space, we get the stack size, which is math.min quantity max quantity. We get the smallest amount. It's the same logic here, except we don't do any decreasing because it's more straightforward. The quantity is this. Because if the quantity is still 67, let's say 67, here, the iterations, we give math.min 67 or 10. So that means we give 10. It's pretty straightforward. We do this 7 times, slowly decreasing the quantity. Actually add it with the available space, and then we decrease the quantity, and then we, if actually added is bigger than 0, then we clone the template, the base template, so that we don't override anything, and we create a custom item ID for the new item. And then we just insert it in inventory.items with the new item template. We add a quantity. As you can tell, quantity didn't exist before. We add it with the quantity amount here actually added here. And then we render the item. So now give items work. Okay, give item works. Okay, so you know what? Let's make a part, and in that part, let's add a click detector. And in this code, let's do this. Okay, we require the profile. We require the inventory module server. And then we do script.parent.mouse click. So if the parent is clicked, if the click detector is clicked, we do inventory.module server give item player start resort 1. So let's see if give item actually works. Here, let's give the item, and see, it works. The item is given. So in the actual game, we're going to be using give item, like in codes and whatnot, when you defeat a boss, or when trading, stuff like that. Okay, so give item is done. Let's do remove item. Okay, so what is remove item? The purpose of this function is to remove an item from a player's inventory. The parameters are the player, the item ID, and the quantity to remove. So we get the profile. This is not needed. This is for debugging, debugging the performance. I actually check the performance of my codes. We get the inventory and we get the item by doing inventory.items item ID, indexing it with the item ID. We check if the item exists. If it doesn't, then we return. So we get the to remove, which is the quantity to remove here, and item.quantity. So if quantity to remove exceeds the item quantity, then we just get the minimum, the smallest number here, which is the item quantity. If it's smaller, it's basically to make the script run smoothly, to not have any negative numbers, to not have any weird bugs, and then we just decrease the quantity with to remove. And here we just decrease it, and let's say the quantity is 0 after to remove. Okay, after decreasing it with to remove. If it's 0, then we haven't deleted the item. So we need to delete the item if the quantity is 0. So if quantity is 0, then we do inventory.items item ID equals nil. And we loop through the backpack to get the exact tool with the same item ID, and then to destroy the tool. Let's just do return actually. Return. And then we if it's not in the backpack, then it's probably the character. We do character find for child item.name. Check if it will exists. Check if item is the same. Then we destroy it. We actually destroy the item. Then if not, then we just update the quantity by doing render item. So let's make a new part to remove an item. but we don't know our IDs. Let's just print player inventory profile dot data dot inventory dot items. Let's see our item IDs first. Where is this? Okay, so this is our sword with this ID. So let's remove that. Let's do this. Make this color orange or something. Yellow. Remove item. Oh my god. We do inventory dot remove item, the player, the item ID, and the quantity to remove 1. Now you might be wondering, bro, if you need to use item ID, then how are we supposed to find our item? Well, you can use some logic, okay? You can loop through the player inventory for item profiles player. Well, let's say we want to remove 5 apple from player or something. You can just loop through the players, loop through the items. ID, item in pairs. There we go. See, if item dot template ID equals apple, then we remove the item player ID. Let's say 10 apples. Apple. Then we return. So that's how you realistically remove items if you want. See, items, the apple is removed. Okay, cool. Now that remove item is done, let's do drop item. Okay, so most of the server script right now is functional. We don't even have to make a client UI or something. The existing UI is decently functional. Just need to add some tweaks. The custom inventory system, the custom item system is already functional, so you don't even have to make a custom UI for the inventory. Unless you want to add in some cool features, maybe show the quantity or something. Okay, so drop item. First, this is useless, by the way. I don't know why I have this. This is useless. Yeah. So drop item. First we need to, this is actually a util function. So there's 2 functions, drop item and create dropped item. Create dropped item, the purpose of this function is to create the little floating items in the ground. Like you want to add in items that are in the ground that you can pick up. That's create dropped item. The template ID, the dropped Z-frame, the quantity. So we do check if item exists by doing this, check in the database. If it exists, then we check if the category exists. We check if the physical item exists. If it is, then we clone it, right? We clone it. And then we change the name to item.name can be dropped equals false, of course. And then we get the handle. Okay, we get the handle of the tool. Because tools have handles. See, there's a handle here. And if handle exists, then we make it so can't touch equals false. Why is that? Because if it's true, then some items can be automatically picked up by just walking over it. So it can't touch to false, and we need the C-frame to be in this drop.C-frame. And then we just add proximity prompt. We add in pickup item, yeah, stuff like that. We put the prompt in the handle. So yeah, this is, yeah. And if prompt is triggered, and once prompt gets triggered, then we get the inventory count. If inventory count plus quantity is bigger than max items, then we return. We don't want to give items to an inventory. We don't want to give, yeah, we don't want to delete the dropped item if the receiving end won't receive the actual items. And then we just give the item here, item support ID quantity. So that's how give item is useful. In code, we give the item with the template ID with the quantity, and then we destroy the dropped item. We parent it to workspace, and then there's a despawn time with 300 seconds. So here, let's create a new code then, free sword. So instead of giving the item, we create dropped item. The template ID, which is starter sword. Why is template ID number? The dropped C frame, which is script.parent.c frame something. Parent.c frame times c frame.no 00 minus 2 or something. The quantity, let's do 1. Let's do apple actually. Apple. Let's do 10. See, we can pick up the apple. Yeah, if you notice lag, it's because of Roblox's lazy loading. As you can see, it's not laggy anymore. It's only laggy for the first time. See, there's a lot of items. As you can see, we've exceeded the max amount. We can't pick up anymore. There we go. And then let's go to dropped item to drop the actual item from the player. The player drops the items like in Minecraft or something. So this function is not create dropped item, it's to drop the item in the player and then we remove the quantity. There's 3 parameters: player, item ID, quantity to remove. We get the profile, we get the item, we check if item exists, it's the same thing. We get the template ID of the item. The reason is so that we can create dropped item. We get the character, we get the root part, we create the dropped C frame, which is root part at C frame, and make it in front of the root part, by 5 studs. We create the dropped item, and only then we remove the item with the quantity to remove. Because create dropped item, actually we can do this the other way around, but it's up to you. Yeah, and then in this code, drop item, same thing here with click detector. We do inventory dot drop item, player, item ID. We loop through the player items here. So that we drop the first item of the player. So here, let's see if this works. So let's try. So the first item is the sword. So let's try dropping the sword. As you can see, there's some lag, which is Roblox lazy loading. As you can see, drop the sword and we can pick it back up. And as you can see, there's no more lag. Just drop all this. Yeah, let's drop all that. Dropping everything. You might also want to add in your own custom UI for the proximity prompt. Okay, that's it. So that's it for the server. Now we have a fully functioning item system, custom item framework. And now let's go over the custom inventory system, the UI, the hotbars, the layouts, the custom descriptions and stuff. Okay, let's do that. All right. Okay, now we go into the UI. Okay, so there's our inventory system. We can make these modules now, but for now I'm going to show the inventory UI, how it works. Okay, I'll place it in starter. Where is it? Oh, it's in start UI. So let's enable this. So let's enable all of this. How do I enable all of this? Visible. There we go. Right. So let's move this. Oops. Let's move this here. Let's move this. So, yeah. So there's the backpack. Let's go with the backpack first. It's a scrolling frame with UI grid layout. The cell padding is 0505 with the cell size 057. So it automatically an UI puts this, an UI inside of this is becomes a grid, not becomes a grid like it. There's a layout, and the size will be 57 pixels or something. And horizontal, yeah, yep. And then the padding 050505, yep. And then the description for the tool, it's a frame with category as a text label, description, and the tool name. You can make this as fancy as you want. And then the tool slot, which is his. There's the tool icon. Yeah, right. It's background transparent. There's tool name. There's tool number. There's tool quantity, like the yellow stuff. Below, there's the tool number here. 1. The color is green. There's a border mode and set. Border pixel size is 2. The size is 057. Then there's this image content or whatever. I don't really know UI. And then there's this hotbar. It's a frame. It's a long frame with UI grid layout. Right. And the sort order is name. It's not layout or it's name. So it's really important because when you put this into hotbar and duplicate it, as you can see, let's name this apple and orange. The tool order is gonna be important. For example, the name is going to be important for that. For example, we're going to set the names into numbers. So this is 1, this is 2. Right, it will be ordered like that. Now if this becomes 10, then orange will come after apple. So if this becomes 1, apple, wait, hold on, 10, wait, yeah, you get what I mean. I don't know why it's not working here. I don't know why it's not working here, but it will automatically sort by the name. So by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, it's going to be easy. So if a tool is in 10, then it'll automatically sort to the last one or something. Yeah, you make this UI. And let's get it back to invisible. Okay, cool. Controller on client modules. All right. So now let's go to preload assets. There's a new script in Star Player scripts. We preload the items. As you can see, we loop through the animations. We make a table ask called assets. We put all the animations here. We loop through the category, and then we loop through the items, and then we insert it here, and then we preload all of that. Cool. Okay, and then let's go to the inventory module. Okay, so in Roblox storage in client systems, there's a new system, inventory system. Okay, there's two modules, the controller and the inventory UI module. The controller is for the controller, the keybinds. The inventory UI modules for the inventory. So let me disable all of this. Do not copy anything yet. Do not write anything down yet. It's not going to make sense. So first I'll have to explain, of course, how it's going to work. So here there's these variables with the config, colors, and default and equipped. These are my colors. You can set it to any color you want. So how this works is that we have a tool slot class, and we have our other module functions. So these are the bigger functions, okay? To initialize this is the inventory function, to initialize the inventory, to equip a tool, to remove a tool. Now this index, this object, this is a tool slot object, a tool slot class. It's for the tool slot, UI, the squares, the little squares. It handles the tool slot UI, the equipping of the UI, the icon of the UI, the drag and drop, the description when your mouse hovers the UI, the destroy of the slot of the UI, of the little squares, the singular square. Okay, we create the UI, we update the UI. So, and in the inventory module, there's going to be multiple tools, right? And to create a tool, and in each tool we create a new slot, of course. Okay, so yeah, let's go to the variables first. We have a config table with the colors, the default color of the slot. It's green for me, and equipped is like a lighter green or a darker green. I forgot. I think it's a darker green. Maybe it's a lighter green. So change the color to whatever you want. The default color will be this. The equipped color will be this. And in the module, right, this is module. Inside of the module, there's values, the hotbar slots, the backpack slots, the tools cache, and the layout. So with the backpack and hotbar. So with the layout, every time the layout changes, we set it to this, and then we send it to the client. And what are hotbar slots, backpack slots? So the items in the hotbar gets put in the hotbar slot. The items in the backpack gets put in the backpack slot. So the backpack is going to the big square, and the hotbar is the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 9 below. And what's tools cache? So in our item system, there's IDs, right? And we want to be able, so instead of backpacks and hotbars, we don't put the tools in this. We actually put the IDs. So ID1, ID2. So that's how you sort the layout like that, like ID3, ID4, and then we put in the index like 0 equals id 3, and maybe 10 equals id 4, something like that. And so then it's going to be hard to get a tool slot or a tool from the id. So that's why with tools cache, we put the tools id instead of the tools cache, and we put the tools inside of the tools cache with the index as the tool id. Because right now it's really hard to reference tools by their id, because the name of the tool is not the id, the name of the tool is the display name. And to get a certain tool with a certain id, then we have to loop through the tools, and then we check the item id attribute. It's going to be a long time, it's going to be inefficient. So that's why we cache it in here. The index is the id. We can just query it like that. Boom, we find the tool. So there's going to be caching involved for optimization, of course. Now the rest of the variables is the user input service, the http service. Actually, we don't use http service. Yeah, we don't. So user input service, the player, game players.local player, the hotbar frame, the description frame, the backpack frame, and the description frame. So the backpack frame is the frame of the backpack, the hotbar frame is the frame of the hotbar, these, okay? And then we get the module for and then we get the remote for inventory change, and then the profiles client. So for the layout, it's pretty simple. So we create a layout copy, okay? We get the max index. We loop through the hotbar, the current hotbar, and we put the item ID, and we put the item ID inside of this. And then we check if pos is bigger than max index, then max index equals position. And then why do we do that? So we want to loop through the max index, and then we get the hotbar that's nil, and then we set the hotbar that's nil to empty. So for example, in the layout, there's 0, right? 0 is id 1, and 7 is id 10, and 8, so the slot 0, the slot 7, the slot 8, like that, is id 11 or something. So there's these spaces, right? There's these spaces. The max index 8, want to loop through them and add filler. Like 1, we add oops. 1, we add empty. 2, we add empty, and so on. So why do we do that? We do that because if there's big spaces between the layout, between the indexes, then it's actually going to disappear when sent to the server. So it's a good way to counter it. And then we get the backpack. We put the backpack inside of this, the layout copy. We send the inventory change to the server, and then we print if you want to. If you don't, that's fine. So in the server, here's how we handle the server inventory change. Oops, not this. We get the profile, and we just put the layout inside of the layout. All we have to do is just save it. That's all we need. And then when the client needs it, just give it back. So that's safe layout. And then before we go to the inventory module, we need to talk about the tool slot class. So the tool slot class is for the slots. Okay, so why do we need this then? Well, this is to create all the slots, and not just the slots, but put the slot inside of this, inside of the hotbar slot, and all the other mechanics. So First, there's the constructor function, toolslot.new. We have a tool as the parameter, what tool it is, the slot type, is it a hotbar or is it backpack? The position, is it number or is it nil? Number is for the hotbar and nil is if it's inside a backpack, then position is nil, of course. Yeah, we create a self-set meta table. We set a meta table. We put tool inside of self.tool, slot type, position, frame, self.frame equals nil. Do we even use self.frame? Yes, we do. Yeah, self.frame equals nil. So now we get into the create UI method. Create UI. So this creates the UI. Okay. So we get the GUI game.players.localPlayer inventory UI, which is this. We clone the GUI tool slot, GUI.tool slot. We clone it, right? We set it to visible. We set the tool name.text to self.tool.name, the tool.name, the display name, and then we update the icon and then update the state. So what is update icon? So we basically just add in texture ID, self.tool.texture ID, and then we set the tools icon.image to texture ID. So why make it a separate method instead of just putting it right here? Well, it's because icons can change, and we want it so that it can change dynamically. When called, it'll update, and then update state. What is that? This is pretty. It has a lot of functionalities. Okay, so we get the quantity. So we check if slot type is hotbar, then we put it in hotbar frame. If it's backpack, then we put it in backpack frame. It's really good when we want to change states in real time, and then we want to update visually. We update state, and then we do self the position. If the position we set the frame.tool number.text to self the position and set visible to true if position exists. If it doesn't exist, then it's inside of the backpack. Then tool number visible should be false. We update the tool number here. We update the quantity here. We set visible to true if there's a quantity. If not, then we set it to false. And then we set text to X quantity. And if it's equipped, self.is equipped, self::is equipped, then we set the color to config colors equipped. If not, then it's the default. So what is equipped? We just check, okay? We get the character, we return character, and self.tool.parent equals character. So it returns a conditional statement. If this is true, then it's going to return true. If these are true, then it's going to return true. If these are false, then it's going to return false. So that's how you know if a tool slot is equipped. Okay. So for toggle equip, so this is how you toggle a tool slot. Okay, we're calling this method. We get the character, we get the humanoid, and then we check if humanoid exists. If it is, then we check if it's equipped. If it's equipped, then we unequip. If it's unequipped, then we equip. So humanoid equip and humanoid unequip is a default Roblox method to equip tools. Okay. So this is just a trigger, a switch, you know. And then destroy. We look through the connections. As you can tell, there's this connections here. Self.connections. So there's going to be self.connections. You see self.connections. We look through the self.connections that disconnect. And if there's a self.frame, then we destroy the frame. Self.frame is here. Okay. And then now there's setup connections. Okay. I'll show description and high description later, but for now I'm going to show the minimum viable product. We add all these connections. I'm not going to show these. This is for the inventory, the grabbing and whatnot, the drag and drop. But the most usable one right now is connections.enabled. It's the name of the connection. We add in indexes of the connections. Enabled, quantity change, name, texture, click. So the enabled is self.tool.ancestry changed connect function. If the tool is nil, then that means the ancestry changed, but the tool is removed. If it's removed, then we return end. And if not, then if it changes to the character or the backpack, then we update the state. And this too, if an attribute changes in quantity, then we update the state. Or when the name changes, then we update tool name.text self.tool.name. Then why do we do this? Because maybe tool names change in real time. If you want to add cool functionalities or something, or in texture ID when they change, we update the icon. And when we click a tool by using soft.frame.mouse button one click, if the frame is getting clicked, then we toggle equip. And then I'll show you these later. So now there's this init function, but I have to show you the caching first. So build tool cache. Basically, we loop through the backpack. We get all the tools, loop through the backpack, get all the tools. We check if item ID exists. If item ID exists, then we put the tool instead of tools cache by using the item ID as the index. So why do we do that? So that it's easy to get a tool just by getting the item ID. Just from the item ID, we can get the tool easily. Okay. So in cache, we have to add. So we can build all the caches here. So what if a new tool gets added? We call add to cache. We check if tool is a tool. We check if item ID exists. If it is, then we add it to tool cache. And remove from tool, we check if item ID exists from the tool, and if item ID exists and it's already in tool cache, then we delete it. It is what it is. And then there's the utility functions, find tool by item ID. So from the item ID, we can find tool by doing if module tools cache item ID, by basically getting the tool from the tools cache. And then we can get slot from tool by doing a loop 0 to 9. We check if hotbar slots I.tool equals tool. Then we return, because the slots, when we initialize them, not only do we create them, but we put them in hotbar slots. And if it's in the backpack, then we put it in backpack slots. We look through the backpack slots. We check if tool is equals tool. Then we return the slot. So this gets the slot from the tool. This gets the tool by item ID. So they work like clockwork. And then there's equip tool, add tool, and remove tool. Let's go to add tool first. So for add tool, we add save layout boolean. Okay, so is save layout true or false? If it's true, then we save the layout. If it's false, then we don't save the layout. So here we add a for loop 1 to 9. It should be 0 to 9 actually. If not module.hotbar slots I, it's 1 to 9 because we don't want items automatically coming into 0. We want it so that only when you rearrange it to 0, then it's in the 0, because 0 can be confusing. So if not module.hotbar slots I, if this doesn't exist, if the slot does not have anything, then we put the tool here. Okay, so what this does is basically we want to add a tool, right? Add a tool to create a new slot. Okay, so first we have a process. We need to add them in hotbar first. We check if hotbar is available. We check for the available slots. If the slot is available, then we put it here. We create tool.slot.new tool hotbar I, the position. Okay, we put it into hotbar slots, create the UI and set up the connections, and add to cache. Because a new tool is added, we get the item ID. If item ID, then we put it in module layout. And then if if we save layout, if layout boolean is true, then we save the layout, and then we return if the tool is already added in the hotbar. Okay, but if the hotbar isn't available, then we put it in the backpack. So we create the tool here, and then we insert it in backpack slots, and then we add to cache, and then we do the same save layout logic here. And in remove tool, we do the same logic. We check for the tools if the tool exists in the hotbar. See, we check, and then we remove it. We change it to nil. We remove from cache. We update the hotbar. We save the layout. Same here. We save the layout. We always save the layout here because it's always a change, because um, a tools getting removed is rarer than tools getting added. So the reason why we add save layout boolean is because when the tools get initialized, there's going to be many tools inside of the getting added one by one. And if it's always saving, then it's going to be sending to the remote event like hundreds of times, depending on your tool amount. You don't want that. So if it's initializing, then the save layout boolean is false, and then we only save it after all the tools get initialized. And if a new tool is added well after the initialization, then we save it, and then only then this is true. Same logic here. We check if the item exists in the hotbar. If it is, then we remove it. We save the layout. We remove from cache. Change it to nil. Destroy the tool. Same here. We check if the backpack exists. You don't need to do the prints here, of course. You don't need to. We remove it from the backpack slots from the layout. So that's the remove tool. So what's the difference between add tool and toSlot.new? So toSlot.new is we create a function to create a slot. Add tool is something bigger, a bigger layer. We create the slot, but not only that, we create the UI, we set up the connections, and then we add it into the backpack slot or the hotbar slot, and then we save it to cache, and then we save the layout. It's a lot bigger. It's a lot bigger. While the slot is just a slot UI. Make it functional. And then we go to init and clear inventory. So there's a initializing tools print here. You don't need to add that. But there's task.wait, repeat task.wait until profile client.data. So we need to wait until the data exists. And then we build the tools cache. Once the tools is available, of course, we can use it freely from the IDs. So we get the backpack, we get the GUI, we get the layout of the inventory data, we get the hotbar frame, we set the hotbar frame to this, backpack frame to backpack, description frame to description, and then backpack.child added. So if a new tool is added to the backpack, then we create the tool. Okay, but first we check if module dot get slots from tool, then that means the hotbar, the tool is already in the hotbar, it's already added. If it's not, then we add the tool. And child.removed, in backpack child.removed, we need to check if there is a tool. If not, then return end. And then we check if the tool is inside of the character or not. If yes, then return. If not, then we remove the tool. Why is that? Because if the tool is removed, then it can be because the tool is getting equipped and it's put inside the character, and we put it inside of text.defer because to add like to give it some delay, some time. And then player.character.child removed, which means that if the tool is destroyed from the character and not transferred into the backpack, so we do the same logic here. We check if we loop through the backpack tool. We check if get attribute item ID the same as item ID here. If it is, then return end. That means the tool is already in backpack. If not, then we remove the tool. So the reason why we do loop here and do find first child here is because only one tool can be equipped, and in backpack there's many tools. So here are the events, so that when tools get added, we create the tool UI. So what about initializing the existing tools? How about that? So first, We set module.layout to layout. Okay, we get the layout from the data, we put it inside of the module. We check if layout.hotbar exists. If it exists, then we loop through the hotbar. Position, item ID. So we need to be able to find the tool from item ID, right? That's why we add this function. And if tool exists with this item ID, and if it's not in the tool slot already, then we create the tool, and then we do this. We create the tool slot, and we create the UI inside the connections. The reason why we don't do module.addTools is because module.addTools is dynamic. It adds it to the earliest available hotbar slot. And in this, we want it to be more specific. The position has to be the position in the hotbar. Okay, and in the backpack, we do the same thing here. Yeah, no position this time. And if there is no layout, if there's no layout, this gets called regardless. This function runs regardless of this loop. We loop through backpack at children. We check if tool is a tool, but we check if tool is already inside the slot. If it's already inside the slot, then we continue end, as in we continue end, right? Not return end. Continue end is we skip to the next iteration. And if the next iteration is not in the get slot, is not in the slot already, then we add the tool. And then after initializing all of this, only then we save the layout. Okay, only then we save the layout. And then in clear inventory, we just loop through the hotbar slots and destroy everything. We remove it from this, and then we yeah. So the reason why we do clear inventory is for when what's this? So now, when a character resets, then the inventory resets. Then it's going to be messy. So when the inventory resets, then we have to clear everything, the UI and everything. That's why we destroy the slots. But there's a reason. That's why we destroy the slots. We reset everything. So now we go to the controller. So in the controller, we require the inventory module. So the controller is we call the initialize function. We get the user input surface, the player, the backpack, the current camera. Wait, why we get the current camera? We don't even need this. My bad. We get a GUI. We get the drop item remote. And then we get the profile client. But first, this is important. We disable the backpack GUI. We disable it. And then we make a new table, key to slot. So these are the keybinds for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, for the slots. And then we show ghost preview. What is show ghost preview? So when you press tab, when we press like this squiggly line, you open backpack, right? And then I want it so that the empty items, they show ghost tools. So we loop through this. We check if the hotbar slot is empty. If it is, then we just clone the UI and create the hotbar, create the ghost slot by making everything empty. And then this is removing the ghost slot. We loop through 0 to 9. We check if it's actually empty in hotbar slots. If it is, then we get the hotbars. We get the ghost slot by doing screen.hotbar and then toString I, the index here. So this is a number, but we have to change it to toString because the name is a string. And then if the ghost slot exists, then we destroy it. First, we need to wait until profiles client.data exists, and then here we go. If player.character already exists, then we do inventory module.init. But if character.added, okay, so this is studio only, but in character added, if the character is added, then we clear the inventory first, and then we initialize. We return an empty an empty module, of course. So we ignore this, we call it drop item. I'll show drop item later. And in back quote, squiggly line, it's a toggle for the backpack. If it's the backpack visible, then we set backpack visible to false. If it's not visible, then we set it to true. And then we remove ghost preview, we show ghost preview. Yeah, so we check if there's input, we check if the GUI already exists. If not GUI, then return end. Okay, so the reason why we initialize the GUI here, because GUIs actually can reset also. And then we get the slot number, put the key code, if slot number, if the key code is in slot number, then we equip the tool with the slot number. Yeah. If it's like A or B or C, it's not in key to slot. And we need to require the controller module. So in start player shift and load modules, we require this. So now we get the UIs. So there's not going to be the description, but and you cannot like rearrange stuff, but you can equip it. See, you can equip it. You can use 1, 2, 3, and then after this, I'll show you the rearranging stuff. It's kind of complicated, but I'll show you the rearranging stuff in the description. But first, I'll show you the drop item. So here in inventory module server, in drop item, there's the player, there's a layout. We don't need this actually, it's kind of silly. We get a tool in the character. Okay, if there's a tool, if there's an item ID, then we do module the drop item the player item ID 1. I'm not showing a UI for like a slider for the quantity amount. It's kind of complicated. You can do that yourself if you want. It's not complicated actually, it's easy, but I'm kind of lazy to do that. I've done so much work. So it's a basic drop 1 quantity. So that's drop item. And then, okay, it works now, it works. And then I'll show you the backpack rearrangement and the description. Okay, let's go for that. And you can open the inventory with the ghost slots, but there's no description yet. So I'll show you how to do that. So in inventory UI module, this is important. In setup connections, I'll show you all of this, but there's also connections for the drag and drop. So let me close all of this. Okay. This is the part for dragging and dropping. So let's make a variable dragging. So dragging is a state for dragging. So if dragging is true, then we can move the UI around. If it's false, then we don't do that. We can get the mouse using get mouse, and we set dragging frame to nil. We're going to use the dragging frame, and then mouse move connection. The reason why we didn't put the mouse move connection instead of connections is that we only wanted so that this event fires when dragging is true. Okay, so because if we just listen to this event every time, then it's going to be laggy. It's going to be there's going to be a lot of checks, so then we have to use it minimally. So I'll show you mouse enter and mouse leave. So for mouse enter, we check if dragging is true. If it is, then we return. So this is for the description. Oops. So this is for the description, okay? We show the description. Self show description. And if we mouse leave, we hide the description. The reason why we don't want to show the description we did in dragging is because we don't want the description to show up while the UI is moving around. Okay, so here, what is show description? Check if not description frame. If description frame is nil, then we reference the description frame. And then we set the tool name, the category, the description, to name, the category attribute, the description attribute. And then we get the frame's position, and absolute size. Self.frame is the tool slot's frame. Okay. And then we set the description frame to position to the slot position x plus slot size dot x plus 10. So it's the offset. We offset it to the right of the slot. And then the y will be slot position dot y. And then we set visible to true. Hide description is we check description frame. If it's visible, then it's false. So that's hide description. So that's show and hide description. So now you should be able to show the descriptions right here, as you can see, but no dragging yet. So I'll show you dragging. Okay, so in these connections, there's grab, self.connections.grab. Okay, here we check if player.clearGUI.backpack is visible. That means the player has pressed back quote, or the player is in backpack mode. That means we should be able to drag stuff around. We set dragging to true. So self.connection grab is self frame dot mouse button 1 down, which means the mouse is holding M1 on the frame. Okay, that's grabbing. Okay, and then we check if the backpack is visible. If the character is in inventory mode, is in backpack mode. If it is, then we set dragging to true. Okay, and then we do mouse move connection equals mouse.move connect. So if the mouse moves, then we connect. If dragging, then we check if dragging is true. And then we check, does dragging frame exist? If it doesn't exist, then we clone it. And then we set our slot, the current slot position, the one that we're holding down, the transparency to 0.5, so that it's semi-transparent, which you can set to 0 if you want. And then we set dragging frame dot parent equals self.frame dot parent dot parent. So what is dragging frame? Dragging frame is like a duplicate of the frame that moves around your mouse. So the dragging frame moves around, and when you drop it, you place it in the slot you want. And we don't want it so that we can drag the frame around if we're not in backpack mode. And then of course we set the dragging frame position to our mouse position -25 and y -25. So it's centered in the mouse. So that's grabbing, right? And then there's grab ended. But first I'll need to show you these functions. There's cleanup drag. This function is to clean up the drag. So once drag is ended, then we clean it up by setting self.frame.transparency to 0, the slot UI transparency to 0, so it's back to normal. We destroy dragging frame and we set dragging frame to nil so that it creates a new dragging frame when we start dragging. And then create ghost slot. It's pretty self-explanatory. We create an empty slot frame by just cloning the tool slot, setting the tool name, the text to empty string, setting the text to the slot position, the name to the slot position, of course, so that it's automatically sorted, visible to true, and place it in inventory.hotbar. And of course, slot position is needed in this function. And then we do handle hotbar drop and handle backpack drop. So what are these? So when you hover the frame around, this dragging frame around, you can drop it into the hotbar or in the backpack. So if it's dropped in the hotbar, then we do handle hotbar drop. If it's dropped in the backpack, then we do handle backpack drop. So make these functions with these parameters, So for the hotbar drop, it's target frame and slot under mouse. What is target frame? Target frame is when you drop your slot into another slot, so it switches positions. So that's the target frame. And the slot under mouse is if you drop it in a ghost. So if you drop it in a hotbar, there's going to be ghost slots and there's going to be existing slots. There's going to be slots. So it's which slot you're dropping the frame in, the new frame in. Okay. So first we get our slot type, our position, and also we get slot under mouse. How do we do that? By doing module dot hotbar slots, index it with slot under mouse. Slot under mouse is a number. Okay, it's a number. So if the slot exists in our hotbar slot, this slot is an actual slot saved in hotbar slots, then we have to replace it. And we have to switch the positions. So self the position equals slot under mouse dot slot type. Self the position equals slot under mouse position, and then we switch it like this: slot under mouse dot slot type equals this, position equals this, right? And then we switch it like this again. We switch it. We just switch the positions, and then we update the layout. We get the slot under mouse's item ID. So we get the tool, and then we get the item ID. If there's an item ID, then we don't have to do this print. So if there's an item ID, then we update the layout hotbar position. And if our item ID exists, then we update it as well. So we just switch the positions basically. And then we do self update state, of course, self update states to update the position of the hotbars. And then we do slot under mouse update state. So we update both states. Okay, we can't just update one state, we have to update both states. And then we have to save the layout, of course. So update state, yeah, we basically just change the numbers, change the positions and stuff. Change the icon name, the tool slot name. And then else, if it's just a ghost slot, if there's no real slot that we're replacing, then we set our slot type to hotbar. Why do we do this? Because maybe we're moving the slot type from the backpack to the hotbar, then we have to make sure to change the slot type to hotbar. Alright. And then the position to slot under mouse number here. And then we check if slot type is hotbar, slot type, our old slot type. Then we do module.hotbar slots, slot position equals nil. And then we create the new ghost slot. What does it do? So let's say you have a slot in 1. You're replacing an empty slot in 9. That means we're removing the module hotbar slot position, the 1 module.hotbar slot with the index 1. We remove that, and then we create a ghost slot for the vacant position. I'll show you. So there's these slots, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 1, 2, 3, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So this is 1. This is 9. This is empty. This is a tool. You want to move this here. That means we just put this here. Okay. We delete this tool. We create the new ghost slot. We replace this with the new slot. And then we just replace it with the new tool. Just change the index. It's that simple. The same logic also applies to this other if statement, this other conditional statement. It's pretty self-explanatory. And then we update the layout, right? We update the layout, and then we save the layout. We destroy the target frame, as in we destroy the ghost slot, and then we update the state. So that's handle hotbar slot. Now let's do handle backpack drop. What is handle backpack drop? It's when you drop a slot from a hotbar and you place it to the backpack. Okay. So slot position. We check if slot position exists. Okay. If it exists, then we set the slot type to backpack, software position to nil. We update the state. Now it's in the backpack. And then now that the slot is vacant in the hotbar, then we create a new ghost slot for the slot position, for the current slot position before we change it. And then we update module.hotbar slots. We remove it from hotbar slots, of course. We insert it in backpack slots, the new slot tool. We get the item ID, and then we just update the layout as usual. We remove it from the hotbar, we add it in the layout backpack. Then we save the layout. These prints are unnecessary unless you want to add it. Now that these helper functions are done, we should do the connections grab ended, which is user input service dot input ended. So when you let go of your mouse, then this then that's the condition for this function to run. So if inputted user input type equals mouse button 1, which means you let go of 1. Okay. We set dragging back to false. We check if dragging frame. If there is no dragging frame, if we're not dragging anything, then we just return end. And then we get our slot type, we get our slot position, we set self.frame.transparency to 0, we destroy the dragging frame, and actually we can just call the cleanup drag. There we go. And then we get the UI under mouse. So when you let go of something, when you let go of this hotbar, you drag it, and you let go here, there's always something underneath the mouse. Okay, there's always something underneath the mouse, even in the backpack. So there's this backpack. You want to drag this, you let go, there's something underneath the mouse, which is this UI or this UI. Okay, we get the UI under the mouse. And then we loop through the UI under mouse. Since it's a table, you return to table, we loop through it. Okay, and then we check for the frame.name, and then we do toNumber. So if we let go of something in the ghost slot or in an actual slot, we let go of it here, then the slot under mouse is this number, this slot frame which name is a number, which is 2 or 3 or 4. Okay, and then we check if the slot under mouse is a number. If it is, then we still have to check if it's inside the backpack, because for example, in the backpack there can be slots, and you can drop the slot inside of this slot, and we don't want to mistake it for the hotbar. So we need to check if frame.parent equals hotbar, then it's in the hotbar. If frame.parent equals backpack, then it's in the backpack. What is frame.parent? Frame is the frame under the mouse. Okay, so this will be the backpack, this will be the hotbar, of course. So if it's the hotbar, then we do handle hotbar drop, the frame, the target frame, and the slot under mouse. If it's backpack, then we do handle backpack drop slot position. And else if there is no slot number, and we just drop it here, the backpack's name isn't a number, it's a backpack. So we just check if frame.name equals backpack, then we just do handle backpack drop with the slot position. And let's see if this works. Okay, you can drag this around, you can drop it right here, you can drop this. As you can see, it's semi-transparent now. This is the dragging frame that we clone. We put it in self.frame.parent.parent or something. If we don't drop it to anything, then it just returns back to normal, of course. There's these descriptions, and yeah, that's it for this video. Okay, thank you so much for watching. There's drop, there's picking up. There might be a little lag at the start, but after it there's going to be no lag. It's just lazy loading, but that's it. And the slot saves. There we go. We can place this around. The slot also saves, and let's see if the slot saves. Okay, let's play. And yeah, the slot saves. It's in the backpack, but there's one problem. It doesn't okay, so there's a new problem. So there's a problem, right? Problem is, like I've shown before, when you put item in 0, it doesn't actually get saved. That's actually because in Lua, tables are 1 indexed, not 0 indexed, so that when you send something to the server, a table, and it has 0 index, then it will disappear. Or that if there's something, if there's big gaps, then the items with big gaps will disappear as well. So that's why we add this empty values. So it's a little quirky like that. It's very quirky. So a good way to go around this is by moving everything by 1. So by the current 1 index becomes 2 index, the current 0 becomes 1, 3 becomes 4, and so on. So we just move everything by 1. So let's do this. Local new position plus 1. In save layout, we just do new position equals position plus 1. Put this in new position. Here also, in init and initialize. So now that in the hotbar everything is plus 1, we should do -1. We should change it to -1. We should basically revert it back to normal. Equals position -1. Put everything in the position like this. Okay, so the reason it keeps messing up is because we set module.layout to layout, and we clearly cannot use the layout raw, right? That's why it keeps messing up. That's why it keeps incrementing by 1. That's why there's these crazy numbers like 11 and 12. That's why it doesn't work. Okay, so instead of doing module.layout equals layout, we do module.layout .backpack equals layout.backpack, like that. And here we put the layout and we put layout in module.layout.hotbar manually, like here, 1 by 1. Module.layout.hotbar, the position equals item ID. There we go. And first let's disable the data, of course. Reset the data. So we have 1, 2, 3, basic. We put this in 0. Let's put this in 9. Let's close this. Let's stop resetting the data. Let's see if this works. See, 0, 2, and 9. It's working. So if we leave again, if we play again, it has to be the same. 0, 2, and 9. Okay, that's it. Yep, we fixed it. Okay, that's it for this video. We made an inventory system. We can drop items. We can pick up items like that. We can drop items like that. We can get new items like this. Oops. We can get new items. We can get new items like this. We can rearrange them, put them in backpack or something. There's the description. We can leave and the data will save. As you can see, the data saves. And yeah, that's all. Thank you so much for watching. This video has been long, and yeah, that's it. See ya.